Hello and welcome back to another episode of In the Spotlight with myself, Junior Parado, and Matt Jessup. Matt, how you doing?
I'm very well, thank you. I'm very well. How are you doing?
I'm good, man. I'm good, thank you. Recovering from Christmas, ate way too much food, of course, but looking forward to rounding off the last episode of the year before we crack on with 2025. But today is going to be a big one. We're going to be looking at player spotlights. We're going to be looking at fixture histories. We've got a couple of games in there as well. So should we crack on with Monday?
Yeah, absolutely. Let's get into it. Monday takes us into a player spotlight and more of a match spotlight to be fair, but we will be focusing on one player and their goals very, very shortly. But the game in question is Aston Villa versus Brighton, a big game in Birmingham. Brighton, who have been struggling against the lower sides but have done very well against the top side. So that'll be an interesting one. And Villa Park, of course, is a bit of a fortress, isn't it, really? But a player who played for both sides, you might know, you might not know, is Darren Bent. Now, what we're going to do, Junior, is go through three very iconic goals which Darren Bent scored. Some brilliant ones. One which is completely comedic, which I'm sure will be very reminiscent for a lot of people. A lot of people will remember a pretty ridiculous moment in the Premier League. And without further ado, let's get on to the first game. Now, we're going to be talking about Charlton 2, Birmingham nil in January 2006. The strength, the pace, gets in behind, and a finish into the top left hand corner. Junior, talk to me about this goal.
Yeah, this was a very this is probably one of his better goals actually, Darren Bent. The ball in behind, it looks like I think it's Mario Melchiot, the Birmingham defender. The video does not do him justice at all because the pace or lack of from the defender it's rough. But Darren Bent, he bursts onto the ball, great couple of first touches, and then smashes into the top corner. It's a really good emphatic finish that, to be honest, just epitomizes Bent as a striker. I looked through a lot of his goals and he doesn't score a lot of worldies, but what he does do is like 95% of his goals are in the box. He's the fox in the box. He's the first on the ball, whether it's rebounds, saves, blocks, whatever. He was always there. He was always on it. A proper striker. So yeah, this goal was a cracker. I'll be honest.
Really nice goal, and obviously, as you say, the defender, bless him. Brilliant pace and power, though, in the finish. Top corner, can't beat it. The second goal, the most impressive of the three by an absolute mile, is in the game of Wolves versus Derby, him playing for Derby, a 3-2 for the away side in November 2016. A ball in behind by Will Hughes. You mentioned he scores a lot of goals in the box, and this one's no different. However, it is a sensational volley into the top left hand corner. A brilliant goal. And we spoke recently about how much we love volleys. Well, me particularly, I love a volley, and I think they're such a brilliant skill. And obviously, we spoke about Di Canio in the past. But, Junior, what do we think about this goal?
Yeah, I mean, well, as you said, like in the inaugural episode of In the Spotlight, we spoke about our favorite Premier League goals. I'm sure it'll be a subject we touch upon again, and we both heavily picked volleys, which I think speaks volumes of what we prefer. But yeah, this is a fantastic goal. I mean, later on in his career now at Derby in the Championship, but still a clinical striker as he was throughout his career, Ben. And yeah, a young Will Hughes, obviously now at Crystal Palace. That bleach blonde, almost white hair is, you can't miss it with a lovely little through ball, and then Darren Bent on the volley to help his side pick up 3 points at Molineux.
Tell you what, very quickly on Will Hughes, what a player. It feels like he's really not approaching, sorry, he's been at his best form for a while. He's almost undroppable in Glasnow's side. They've got a lot of really good midfielders, Crystal Palace, and it's great to see a player who was very good and a standout for Watford in the Championship become a Premier League regular and a very good player at that, very tenacious and very ball dominant, integral for the creative and the defensive side of the game for Crystal Palace. Now, on to the final goal of the three. We've spoken about one brilliant goal, a brilliant volley. We've spoken about a lovely top corner finish, nice composure. Now we're talking about the famous beach ball incident. If you don't know, get to know, I'm sure you know. But Sunderland against Liverpool to win them the game in 2009 in October, cuts it back. Well, Darren Bent gets the ball, and what can only be described is as hilarious, one of the most ridiculous moments in Premier League history. Shoots the ball, the bit hits a beach ball, which is for some strange reason on the pitch, and goes the complete opposite way. Wrong foot's the keeper, and it goes in. Ridiculous. Junior.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if I'm mistaken. I feel like I remember it being. I remember seeing a Liverpool badge on the beach ball as well, so it might have even been from the Liverpool fans. But nevertheless, a kind of controversial moment. But as the referee, what do you do in that scenario? Like, can you rule out the goal? Like, I don't think you can really. And unfortunate for Liverpool and Pepe Reina, who was in between the sticks, he sort of left perplexed at what's just happened. And to make matters worse, that was the one and only goal in that game as well. So it gave Sunderland a massive 3 points early on in their Premier League campaign. But yeah, we obviously spoke about some quality goals from Darren Bent. This was a more of the fortunate side from the striker, but take nothing away from him. I mean, the guy's record: 218 goals in 571 appearances for 9 different clubs. He's got over 100 Premier League goals, and any player with that tally, that record of 100 goals in the Premier League, is worth mentioning for sure. He's been capped by his nation. So Darren Bent, again, one of those strikers who maybe is forgotten about a lot, but a proper striker, and definitely one for the ages. So as Tuesday is New Year's Eve, we're going to run a wild card because there's not really too many games going on New Year's Eve. So what we're going to do instead is I'm going to give Matt a game, and of course, everyone watching at home can play along as well. Matt, what I want you to do is in 30 seconds, I want you to name 7 men's professional football clubs that have the word new at the start of their name. So in conjunction with the whole New Year's Eve theme, I've got 7 clubs with the word new at the start of their name that are in professional world football. Now, I've given you some clues as well, some sort of asterisks, you know how many letters there are. I've also given you the countries they're in as well, because it could be a little bit difficult. So how you feeling? Do you reckon you got this one in the bag?
I do, yeah. Why not? Well, maybe not all of them, but yeah, go on then.
Love the confidence. Love the confidence. Right. So I'll count you down, and then we'll get going. So your 30-second timer starts in three, two, one, go.
New York City, New Orleans. I think they might not be a thingy team. Newcastle Jets, New Boys, Newcastle, New York City. Of New York United, is there another New York team? Can't think. How many have I got there?
You've got 4. The New Orleans isn't one, but there is another New York
They're
team.
NBA, aren't they? New York City. I don't think New York United. New York Red Bulls
Yep.
is a yeah.
Oh, that's your time already. Jesus, that went so
Damn, that
quick.
was quick.
That's right. You got 5. That was pretty good. So you got
I feel like I missed Argentinian one, didn't I?
so there were 3 Americans. So you got New York City and New York Red Bulls, and then the third American one was New England Revolution.
Oh, I
Uh,
could have got that. Okay.
you got Newcastle in England. You got Newell's Old Boys in Argentina. You got Newcastle Jets in Australia, and then I think the other one that you missed was a Welsh team that are actually in League Two, and it's Newport County.
Newport just didn't come to my mind. Every other
Hey,
one
that's
did,
fair.
so I'll take that.
Hey, look, you did well, man. You did well. What did you get? 6 out of 7. That was the. Oh no, 5 out of 7. Sorry, 5 out of 7.
Five.
That's pretty impressive, man. That's pretty impressive.
I'll take it. I'll take it. Let us know if you beat me in the comments, or how many you got. Let us know.
So Wednesday sees us the return of Premier League action, and we have a hot topic for you guys and for us to discuss. And it's we're going to be looking at the fixture Brentford v Arsenal, a London derby. It seems like we have one of those every week. But what I want to talk about is Arsenal in particular, Mikel Arteta's side, who it's been kind of no secret that over the last few years they've become one of the best teams in the country. They've become sound defensively. They've been challenging for titles over the last couple of years as well. And the thing I want you guys in the comments to discuss, and what I'm going to discuss now with Matt, obviously he is an Arsenal fan as well, so we can get a good insight from him. Is are Arsenal really there in terms of can they challenge this season, and is this season their best sort of chance? Because they've been pipped to the post by Man City in the last couple of years. Granted, it was when City were sort of unstoppable because Arsenal kind of it was in their hands for a couple of years potentially, but City have just been this unstoppable force. But now this season, it looks like they've completely fallen off, and it's going to take a miracle for them to challenge. But now you've got Liverpool, so Matt, I'd just love to know your thoughts on how Arsenal are growing as a team, and if you think this season they can compete like they have in the last couple of years, and if this is their best chance to compete.
It's a good question. I think I'll try to keep it relatively short and relatively topical, but I think it's difficult because when you talk about this season, Arsenal have already dropped so many points, and every time they faced adversity, they've struggled to overcome it. And unfortunately, the reality of the Premier League is you have a lot of really difficult fixtures. And to be honest, you need luck at times. You need luck with injuries, and you need luck with when you play teams. Arsenal have had the complete opposite of that. I think even the fact that Arsenal played an informed Crystal Palace team when they did epitomises the luck they've generally had this season in terms of playing City, obviously with Rodri, but more to the point when they weren't in free fall. Playing United early on under Amorim, I wouldn't exactly classify that as like completely unlucky, but just the general perspective that most of the games Arsenal have had timing wise has just been in a really unfortunate manner. You look at Atalanta, got a group between Spurs and Man City away. You look at Inter Milan, got a group between Chelsea away and Newcastle away. And now you look that Bukayo Saka, Arsenal's best player, is a most consistent player, most reliable player, is out for a few months, or most likely a few months, or somewhere around that of time. It's difficult, and sadly, when you look at, as I say, the amount of points Arsenal have dropped, and the reality is they're a team which is maybe projected a 75 point type mark, really. So all Arsenal can do, and particularly for me, from an Arsenal fan's perspective, is just win the games. I want to be able to watch Arsenal, enjoy Arsenal. As I say, string a bunch of victories together, see where you can get to, keep players fit, which unfortunately just seems to be the complete opposite this season. The players who have almost been very resolute or very difficult to get injuries, so to speak, have been the one who's got injuries this season. So that's how it is. That's how it is with the schedule. And potentially Champions League is a more viable, huge competition for Arsenal, but probably more so the Cups. But I'd be intrigued to hear what you think, Junior, obviously, from a Spurs fan's perspective.
Well, I mean, for me, I guess to sort of play devil's advocate with what you said about being unlucky with the times you play these teams. Um, I guess if you want to be one of these top teams, if you want to be the best of the best, I'm sure if you look at City, I'm sure whenever they came up, obviously this season, sort of, if you void this season, if you look over the last 5-6 years, I'm sure they never really had spells when they came up against the team that were best in their form. They went, like this is unlucky that we're playing this team right now. If you want to be the best of the best, you should be able to play any team at any point, right? But for me, I think Arsenal are kind of almost getting to that point. Like the the project under Arteta has been growing over a few years, and I think the point where I really noticed it for the first time was in this fixture, Brentford v Arsenal, which is sort of the one we're touching upon. There were two occasions. The first one was when Brentford hosted Arsenal in their first season back in the top flight after 74 years, back in the 21-22 season, I think it was. And Arsenal lost 2-0. They were outplayed, outperformed. Brentford were just miles better on every front. And then fast forward 13 months, and they face each other again in the same fixture early on in the season, and Arsenal go there and win 3-0. And I remember watching that fixture and thinking, wow, the change from this fixture this season to last season is massive. So I do see what Arteta's building, and I think it is working because, when I watch Arsenal now, there are hardly any teams where I think they could lose to, which I think is testament to them. But, it's a difficult one. Every team's going to have injuries. Every team's going to drop points. I just think with City's falling off, is this not the best chance for Arsenal to win the title? I know that they've been in better positions in the last 2 years, but I mean, how do you see sort of Liverpool's challenge from an Arsenal point of view, Matt? Do you think that they can keep it up? Do you think they're going to kind of be the new City for you to fight for the title for, or do you see Arne Slot's reign sort of falling off a little bit?
I think for me, Liverpool, the bigger focus for me is just Arsenal. It's not for me in an arrogant way where I think Liverpool are going to fall off or drop off, or do I think Liverpool are going to win every game? Absolutely not. I think they're a top side and they've got some of the greatest players the league has ever seen. They've got a core which is brilliant. They've got a lot of depth. They're very well equipped to deal with injuries. You know, they had Trent out for a period of time. A lot of people have said they haven't really had injuries, which I don't think is true at all. They've maybe had slight fortunes at times, but they had McAllister out for a bit of time. They had Alisson out for a few months, which would be a major injury to another side. They had Trent Alexander-Arnold out for a bit. They had Harvey Elliott out for a bit. You know, like, obviously Elliott not quite grouped in that same quality of player, if you will, but he's still a quality player who can add a lot to that Liverpool side. And I think it's understated that Liverpool have had injuries, not as significant, as Arsenal, in my opinion, but they have had injuries, and I think they've just coped with them really well. And unfortunately, the reality is when you have players who are as inevitable as Mohamed Salah, Virgil van Dijk and Trent Alexander-Arnold, there's not much you can do. And the fact that obviously Saka's got that injury now for Arsenal, that difference maker player for Arsenal, not that he's, you know, comparative to Salah, but if you're looking at difference makers for each Premier League team, and, you know, the level he's been performing at is as high as pretty much anyone in the country, let alone the world, along with Mohamed Salah and a few other names in the league, mainly those two though, to be honest. So that's a huge miss. And I think if you ask, you know, can Liverpool go away with it or will they fall off? For me, I think they'll drop more points. I think there are certain fixtures because of the level of the Premier League which will hurt them, which will get them. You know, your Newcastle aways, when they play Bournemouth away, will be a very tough one. When they play City away, maybe City have slightly adjusted. You know, you're not really sure in that regard. But there will be difficult games. They nearly slipped up at Southampton away a few weeks ago. And obviously they got Everton away to play as well. But I just think that they have players where even when they're not quite on their A game, can just win them a game on their own. And I think Arsenal, for me, the question of whether Arsenal win the Premier League title this season is, do you trust Arsenal to capitalise when Liverpool drop points? And can Arsenal keep their squad fit? The second answer is probably no. And the first answer, there's sample size, particularly in the past. But I think even if you look at last season, Arsenal won 16 games, drew 1 and lost 1 in the last 18 games in a run. And that is incredible. But it still wasn't enough to win the Premier League title. And those are the levels. City have fallen off, of course. I get that. But that's the level of the Premier League. It'll probably be more of a normal points tally. But do you see Arsenal capitalising when Liverpool drop points? Particularly in a month like January. You know, Arsenal haven't really capitalised when Liverpool have had their tough period. December. And that's what it boils down to for me.
Well, I think what this season has already shown is anything can happen. You know, City have dropped off. Man United and Tottenham are in the bottom half. Forest and Bournemouth are up in the European places. So anything is possible this season. But we'd love to know you guys' thoughts. What do you think in terms of the title race? Do you think Arsenal are in it? Do you think they can compete? Will Liverpool drop off? Will City make a comeback? Let us know your thoughts in the comments.
Thursday takes us to a team spotlight, onto the game of Rangers versus Celtic. However, the question we want to rise to each other is essentially, or to everyone watching, what is your favourite derby in football? Me and Junior are both going to list our top three. Obviously, Rangers Celtic on that game very quickly. Old Firm derby, a huge game. It feels like it's 3 or 4 or 5 times a season at this rate, but a massive rivalry nonetheless. And without further ado, Junior, what's your first rivalry?
Well, I mean, just to touch on Rangers Celtic real quick, they seem to play each other like 4 or 5 times a season, but they always deliver as well. Like if there's a game that I can watch, I always look out for that one because it always delivers. And I think just last weekend they played in a League Cup final, drew 3-3, went to penalties, was mad drama. So that is always a great one to watch. For me, I guess the first one I'd put in there, I'm going to go with the Derby della Madonnina, which is the Milan derby, AC versus Inter. Again, like Rangers Celtic, this one always delivers. It's always the one I look for in the Canada because these two they just seem to bring out the best of each other. And the fact that they share a stadium, which for me is just unimaginable. Like imagine like Tottenham and Arsenal sharing a stadium. It just seems crazy, but that's a whole nother thing. But yeah, AC Milan, Inter Milan is a phenomenal derby. I always recommend anyone to watch it. So yeah, that's definitely in my top 3. How about you, Matt? What's the first one on your list?
Great pick, that. Two phenomenal sides, obviously. Legendary sides. And Inter, obviously, so dominant recently, but AC obviously got that Scudetto a few years ago, which is pretty huge. My first pick is the eternal derby, Partizan Belgrade versus Red Star Belgrade. I'm not going to pretend like I've watched it, but my word, the scenes from that game, it's ridiculous. You look at what football or what makes a good derby, or how much of football nowadays, rivalry-wise, feels a bit forced or is actually a proper rivalry. My word, these two aren't big fans of each other at all. Electric atmospheres, ridiculous tifos, crazy, crazy games between the two. And it's just the type of game where if you can get yourself tickets to it, if presuming safety is okay and whatnot, then you probably would.
Yeah, the Eternal Derby seems like it's one of those where it's more than football, right? And it's there's so much weight on those games, and you can see it, the passion, the atmosphere. Those games are massive over in Serbia. So yeah, great pick. And kind of sticking on that theme of kind of feeling bigger than football, I'm actually going to go out to South America for the Super Classico, Boca Juniors River Plate. Now, this derby, I think it was a few years ago. They played each other in the American version of the Champions League. They played each other in the final. Now the final is played. It was played obviously in Argentina, and there was so much hostility between the fans that twice the game got postponed on the day before it actually had to be eventually played in Europe because of safety. And I think it was Copper 90 did a documentary about this derby, about this game a couple of years ago, and it was a phenomenal watch because you see how much it means to those people out there. It is like a religion to them, and it's almost a little bit unhealthy because you hear of crazy friendships ending. Like I think there was a story of one friend burning the other friend's house down because they were rival fans and they got into an argument. There's just so much
God.
animosity between the two fan bases, and perhaps it overspills sometimes. And as I said, it can be too unhealthy. But when you see them play each other and the atmosphere's there, it's electric. And yeah, that's one that is definitely on the bucket list to go and see a Super Classico.
Turning things a tiny bit less violent, shall we say, I'm going to go with the game which both sides, well, the classic really, it's in the spotlight derby, if you will. Arsenal
Yeah.
versus Tottenham. Maybe recently, it's been a bit more one-sided than people would have liked to see from a game which just produces complete chaos and non-stop entertainment. But even saying that, Spurs came to the Emirates last season and drew 2-2. And before Mikel Arteta joined Arsenal going to Spurs and getting a result or winning the game was almost unheard of. So it's ridiculous what Mikel Arteta has done in that regard. But that fixture, Junior, I mean, complete chaos all the time, right? Like ridiculousness always seems to happen. David Bentley's volley, I remember from a Spurs perspective. Obviously, you have Rosiski's beautiful goal. You have so many countless ridiculous goals. You have the Walcott moment where he holds up 2-0 as he's going off the pitch. You have so many special moments from that fixture. And I think obviously a lot of the games we've spoken about so far are quite animosity fueled. And I'm not going to pretend like these two sides like each other because they obviously don't. But more from a footballing standpoint, the North London derby very, very rarely disappoints, doesn't it?
It's again like I kind of as we're listing them off now, I kind of relate them to the other ones. But Rangers, Celtic, Inter Milan, AC Milan, Tottenham, Arsenal, they are games that do not disappoint. And I think Gary Neville famously calls it his favourite game in football because it always delivers. And yeah, as you said, Arsenal have kind of had the rub of the green in recent years. Unfortunately for Tottenham, but those tides always turn, and both teams have momentum. But yeah, one thing's for certain is when these two match up, they always deliver. Now, for me, for my third and final pick, I'm gonna also be picking an English derby, and it is the Tyne Wear derby, Newcastle v Sunderland. We saw it in the FA Cup. I think it was last season for the first time in maybe a decade or so, and that was a brilliant game. Newcastle ended up running away winners at the Stadium of Light, but the atmosphere was electric, and that's kind of one of the reasons why I'm hoping for Sunderland to be promoted this season because we can have the Tyne-Wear derby twice again in a Premier League season, and again, Newcastle and Sunderland, these they hate each other, but it brings out brilliant football, brings out amazing atmospheres, and this is why we love football, the rivalries. And yeah, the Newcastle Sunderland is definitely up there for me. I mean, I was up in Newcastle last year, towards the back end of last year, and you can just tell. I love it when you have a city that just they all support that team, and I feel like the further up north you get, the more you get that. Whereas down south, it's quite mixed. Everyone in Newcastle is a Newcastle fan, and I love that, and it just makes the rivalry a million times better.
Absolutely, and obviously they played each other in the FA Cup a few years ago, and as you say, it's the novelty because they're not in the Premier League. You don't get this fixture twice a season like you used to, and it's just the unpredictability of a now Championship side, or even before a League One side playing against Newcastle United. You never know what's going to happen. Obviously, the side's fortunes have changed a lot in recent years, but the final game I'm going to go to is a bit, I don't want to say less generic because I feel like they're all, it's all subjective, right? But I'm going to stick to England and I'm going to go to not the Championship, another one of the Premier League versus Championship sides. Well, I'm going to throw two out because I both feel like they belong in the same sort of vein because they are both in the same part of the world, in the Midlands, in the Birmingham type of area. I'm going to go with Wolves versus West Bromwich Albion, which happened last season. And I think it was Pedro Neto's goal which won the game for the away side, which was a pretty significant moment. The atmosphere, what it means to these players, you can just tell. And once again, the novelty of it will not wear off because these sides don't play each other every day. Maybe they will. But, a little sneak peek for Friday, Carlos Corberán, their manager, will no longer be there. So that's related to West Brom. See how they can adapt from that, who's done brilliantly for themselves. And obviously, as I say, the other English game, Aston Villa versus Birmingham, another game which doesn't really happen, but carnage. The sides don't particularly like each other, to put it lightly, and obviously produces some pretty ridiculous games and moments.
Yeah, we're gonna unfortunately have to wait a couple of years for that one to be a league fixture once again. Although it does look like Birmingham are going to be up in the Championship come next season, so who knows under Tom Brady's reign? Obviously, we spoke about Birmingham in last week's episode. I mean, maybe they'll be back up in the Premier League in a few years' time. But yeah, some big picks in there. Let us know in the comments what is your favourite derby to watch.
Friday takes us on to a fixture spotlight where we go to Spain, where Valencia, who have really been struggling recently, sitting 19th in La Liga, not had the greatest time of things recently in general. Very sad to see for a club which used to be one of Spain's greatest, a lot of history and whatnot, playing up against Real Madrid, who look to slightly be finding their feet big time. Obviously, Barcelona started the season phenomenally well, and Real Madrid are slightly catching up to things now, really, aren't they? They're second place behind Atletico Madrid on the same amount of games at the time of recording this. I'm sure that has slightly changed by then, but they are doing very well. And two people we want to talk about is the Valencia side of things. They've got a new manager, Carlos Corberán. I told you we'd be talking about him. Done fantastic things at West Brom for quite a few years, and now Valencia have decided to appoint the former West Bromwich Albion man. Junior, what are your thoughts on this one? How much do you think this can kickstart Valencia's season, shall we say? One of my good friends is a Valencia fan, so it's an unfortunate situation to be. Obviously, a club which was so brilliant is just struggling. They can't quite catch a break, can they?
Yeah, I mean, I hope they turn it around. They're kind of one of those clubs that you kind of look out for. For me personally, seeing them in the relegation zone seems quite alien. Like 10, 15 years ago, they were an ever present in Europe. They've had quality players like David Silva, David Villa, Andre Gomez, Juan Mata, even going a bit further back, Fernando Morientes and Edison Cavani. They've had fantastic players repping their badge over the years. And for me, they are a team that should be up there, but nothing's a given in football and you have to earn everything. So if they're struggling right now, it's because, that is where their form shows that they should be. So hopefully the new manager can give them some bounce. It's obviously a big loss for West Brom, who I think are doing quite all right in the Championship this season. So I'm interested to see who they bring in. But yeah, for me, I hope Valencia sort of turn it around. They're one of those teams that you'd like to see back up in the European places. They're a bit of an old school team from my point of view. And then, yeah, obviously their opponents, Real Madrid. I think there was a lot of pressure on Madrid this season because bringing in Mbappe, the team they're sort of building. I think a lot of people were expecting this to sort of just gel into another Galacticos type scenario, but hasn't quite clicked as much. And Matt, you're going to talk to us a little bit more about Kylian Mbappe, perhaps the man who's got the most pressure on his shoulders, despite being a free signing. He hasn't actually cost the club anything in terms of a fee, but all the pressure's on the Frenchman's shoulders.
It is, and I was watching, I think it was the ITV broadcast when they were talking about the signings of the summer so far, and I think it was Guillaume Bauguet, and it made me kind of think. He said, when he got asked about Kylian Mbappe, being a great signing, but just like any other human, he needs to be able to adapt. He needs to be able to find his feet. He's still done well. And it really got me thinking, have people been a bit too harsh or a bit over the top on Kylian Mbappe? Of course, they're expecting the world of him, and I understand that. But there is, of course, the human nature that a player needs to adapt, and he's equally not done too bad in general at Real Madrid. Obviously got a goal against Sevilla in a 4-2 win. I said 4-0, 4-2. And, he looks to slightly be finding his feet, so to speak. And he is a player who's very easy to scrutinise, particularly given, obviously, the age he's at now and what people saw of him at a very young age. But we know what type of profile he is. We know how good of a player he is. We know how he thrives off being on the last line. And a player who's just so rapid, has that signature finish, giving the keeper the eyes and putting it in the near post. He has so many strings to his bow, and it's strange to see a player like that not struggle, so to speak, but, maybe have a slower start. But it did get me thinking, hearing when they were talking about it the other day, that players do need time to adapt and do need time to start things off, really. You look at Kylian Mbappe's scoring record this season, and, it's not bad at all, considering for Real Madrid, he has played 24 games, scored 14 and got 4 assists, which is not bad at all. But of course, the pressure of the world is on his shoulders. Things haven't gone quite as smoothly as the earlier years at Monaco, of course, and then obviously he's moved to PSG. So it'll be interesting to see quite how well Real Madrid can do, particularly without that focal number 9 you'd associate with a Real Madrid or with a modern side. Mbappe's far better off that left-hand side, but of course then you've got the dilemma of Vinicius Jr. and Rodrigo, which adds another level of adaptation. But it'll be interesting to see how the season plays out, particularly for Carlos Corberán, who's done very well at West Brom, as we mentioned, 7th this season, got playoffs last season, 5th place. Be interesting to see how he does and how Real Madrid continue to do, of course, starting with that fixture. We have now approached the weekend. We have approached Saturday, and we've got another team spotlight for yourselves. Tottenham versus Newcastle. However, Tottenham, the focus on that is going to be about a certain nation who Spurs used to have a lot of brilliant players from in their golden generation, in Spurs' golden generation and in Belgium's golden generation. So, what I'm going to ask you to do, bit of a mini game, Junior, is to name from the World Cup semi-finals, France versus Belgium in 2018 on the 10th of July. I want you to name me the full Belgium team. You've got 3 lives, but I'm sure rules can be adjusted. The formation is a 3-4-2-1. Well, it says 3-6-1, but let's be honest, it's more of a 3-4-2-1. And how do you feel about this?
Okay, I should be all right. As you said, a few Tottenham players, I mean, one of my favourite players of all time, I think should be in this lineup. So, yeah, part of this golden generation for Belgium where they really should have won something they didn't. I remember this being sort of their last tournament as that sort of team together. So, yeah, let's give this a go. Okay, so I'll go with, I believe it'll be Courtois in goal.
Yep.
Okay.
You're off to a flyer. Well done.
And then, so back 3 you said. So I think 2 of them will be Vertonghen and Alderweireld.
Yep.
Okay, so I think Moussa Dembele, was he starting?
He was. Any ideas where exactly?
Was he not centre mid? Was he a bit more attacking? Or was he? I'd assume
he was
centre mid.
He was not centre mid.
Right. Oh, he was in the front 2, was he? Or in the 2?
Not even. He was sitting off the right hand side.
Wow. Fair enough.
Sitting as a right back, right wing back, right midfielder.
That man, one of my favourite players of all time, Moussa Dembele. So underrated. Absolutely love him. But yeah, all right, cool. Moussa Dembele's in there. Kevin De Bruyne surely started.
Yep.
Eden Hazard.
Yep.
Romelu Lukaku.
Yep, that's the front 3 nailed off. So you got the front 3, the keeper, 2 centre backs, and the right midfielder.
Okay, so we've got left mid, 2 centre mids, and a centre back. A centre mid. Who would be playing centre mid? Tielemans?
He
Ooh,
is
okay,
on the
that's
bench,
that's a
unfortunately.
life gone. Okay, I want to go. Oh, now I've just lost a life. I'm a bit wary, but left mid, I'm gonna go.
Ooh.
Was it Nasser Chadley at left mid?
That's solid from you. Very solid. You didn't go for the Carrasco trap. You went for Nasser Chadley, your former Tottenham man,
And it
and you got
was
right. And you're right.
nice. Okay, all right, cool. So centre back to oh god, why can't I think of the centre mid? Axel Witsel.
The centre back is. Yep, there you go. That's one. The centre back is nice and easy. I mean, they're both pretty simple. The centre back especially is a nice one.
I mean, I don't think was Company still playing then? Would it have been
I think he
Company?
was.
Yeah, we'll go with Company. Vincent Company at the back.
Yep. I mean, I could have just not said that.
Okay, so just the other centre mid to go. Oh, I'm struggling here. Can you tell me what team they played for?
They went to
Oh,
China
that might
later
give
on
it
in their
away.
career. That might be easier or harder, but if I give you the other teams, it's a giveaway.
They went to China later on in their career. I mean, Carrasco went to China, I think, but he didn't play centre mid. I'm struggling for this last position. I'll go Carrasco, but I don't think it was.
You've got one life left well, it was the final club he played for before he retired. There's a lot I can say about this man, but I'd rather not just because anything I tell you will be nice and obvious.
Can you give me one of his clubs, or has he not played for that many?
Arguably, okay, I'm not going to tell you one of his clubs. I'm arguably going to tell you he's the type of profile which Mikel Arteta would probably quite like in his team.
I mean, as a Tottenham fan, that does not help at all.
Thinking about the signings Arsenal have
Um,
made, particularly in that midfield.
Marouane Fellaini.
There you go. That is the full team. You just about
What
survived
a hero.
one life. I think if I said Everton, if I said Man United, if I said he had a big afro, giveaways. So I thought that would be the best way about it. But let us know how you got on in the comments. Well done to Junior, who got them all. Only lost 2 lives in the process, so not bad going.
I'll take it, man. I feel bad for that Belgian side. It was kind of very much like Tottenham during that period where under Poch, where the team was too good not to win something. But yeah, those 3 tournaments where Belgium were in, like the 2014 World Cup and the 2016 Euros, I think they went out in the quarters both those times, and then got to the semis in that World Cup where they lost to France. That team was phenomenal, and it should have won something. Really, it's kind of criminal that they didn't, but that's football, nothing to given. But yeah, let's know in the comments how you got on if you got all 11. So the final day of our week, Sunday, takes us into a mouth-watering tie. We spoke about derbies earlier on in the episode, and this is another big one. Liverpool hosting Manchester United at Anfield. And we're going to take you down memory lane, in a fixture history flashback. So we're going to look at a couple of fixtures here, a couple of iconic ones. In fact, we're going to go all the way back to March 2009 to kick us off, where Sir Alex Ferguson's Man United hosted Liverpool. They went 1-0 up early doors, Cristiano Ronaldo with the goal, but everything would turn sour for the Red Devils as Liverpool would go into half-time 2-1 up. Fernando Torres and Steven Gerrard scoring. That was the infamous Steven Gerrard camera kiss, which I feel like he kind of started that trend, you know. I feel like that's the one when you think of a camera kiss. And then, yeah, going into the second half, it went from bad to worse for United. Vidic got sent off. Liverpool went on to get a couple more and win 4-1, handing United the heaviest defeat in 17 years in any competition, which I think just speaks volumes of Sir Alex Ferguson and the quality he had as a manager, because, there's probably double digits, occasions where they've lost by more than that scoreline, and they hadn't lost by that for 17 years, which is crazy. So, yeah, big one for Liverpool. United did go on to win the title, but it was advantage Liverpool that day. Matt, talk to me about this fixture.
Crazy. I mean, it's quite funny you make that comment about Sir Alex and how good he was, because United, another fixture we'll get onto later on, we can safely say that 4-1 has been beaten not once, twice, I don't know how many times, but a numerous amount of times. and not exactly in games where you'd normally associate United to just casually lose 3 or 4-0 like they have to Brighton or Brentford. Obviously to Liverpool as well, even heavier, like we will talk about very shortly. And early on in the season, 3-0 at Old Trafford. But yeah, infamous game really, particularly under Sir Alex. As you say, that type of defeat was few and far between. So says it all really. And as you say, that Gerrard camera kiss, obviously Trent tried to recreate it all those years later. Unfortunately, the goal was disallowed, but football still got or Liverpool fans still got a pretty iconic picture.
So the second game we're going to go into was just a year later, actually. Man United again hosted Liverpool at Old Trafford, but this time it'd be the home fans with the last laugh as Dimitar Berbatov. What a man! What a striker! Coming up with a hat trick. Scored a couple of goals. Looked like United were cruising. Gerrard would score twice in 6 minutes to silence the home fans, but with 6 minutes to go on the clock, Berbatov would pop up with his hat trick. His second goal, the most notable one, where he's popped up on his knee and hit an overhead kick where he's got barring in. Pepe Reina stood still in his goal. He couldn't do anything about it. And yeah, Berbatov would go on to win the Golden Boot that season. Man United would win the Premier League. Another great season for United under Sir Alex Ferguson. And yeah, Dimitar Berbatov, Matt, what a player he was.
He was brilliant, and I don't know if you watched it a few weeks ago. I love Monday Night Football personally. This guy from Sky from Sky Sports, and they do a lot of analysis, and they often have guests beforehand to talk about their goals, their career, obviously current football and current Premier League. But Dimitar Berbatov, the goals he'd score, his general way of thinking was just special. The technical ability, the want to just entertain people. Entertainers people appreciate. At the end of the day, when you watch football, you want to be entertained, and he's the definition of a player who will entertain you, scoring volleys, scoring acrobatics, scoring sensational goals. And yeah, what a player, really. A very unique type of player, and obviously getting a hat trick in that game, and sharing the golden boot alongside Man City's Carlos Tevez. So a top player. And we'll move on to the third of the 4 fixture histories.
Yeah, so the third one takes us from one nonchalant player in Berbatov to another in many sense, Anthony Martial. September 2015, again at Old Trafford. United again victorious in this one, 3-1. The youngster just signed from Monaco. I think it was about £36 million he was signed for, which seems like nothing these days, doesn't it? But I remember at the time it was big money for a player, for a youngster. And with just a few minutes left on the clock, he gets the ball out wide to the left, turns Martin Skirtle inside out before putting the ball into the corner. And the thing I remember about this one, as much as the goal, was the commentary. The famous lines, I think it's from Martin Tyler, going, "Oh yes, welcome to Manchester United, Anthony Martial," and gives you big goosebumps, man, watching it back. Yeah, it's a shame that Martial's career kind of didn't work out for him. Obviously famously had that Ballon d'Or clause in his contract as well. So yeah, unfortunate for him, it hasn't worked out, but what a moment that was. And yeah, Matt, talk to me about having a moment like that in a derby like that as a teenager just coming to England.
Semi unheard of, to be honest. I think now you talk about players are scoring in all sorts of games at any age. Obviously, you've got the likes of Lamine Yamal. You've got Arsenal's Ethan Nwaneri. You've got players like Lewis Miley from Newcastle, Kobbie Mainoo. A whole host of worldwide players, and I'm missing out a huge chunk. But the principle is, being a young player and coming on the scene and being a difference maker, particularly in a game like that, was pretty unheard of in 2015. So an unbelievable moment. As you say, commentary just always makes goals so iconic, doesn't it? And yeah, Martial, what a player. Had a great few years at United and obviously now in Greece. It's unfortunate that he couldn't quite keep up the longevity or continue with the expectations which he originally set for himself in his career. But United's a very hard club to thrive at. So for him to thrive from the bounce, and obviously for the money which United did pay for him, his general profile, very quick, very strong, a great link-up man, almost associated with the false nine type of things, but often played off the left-hand side too. So a brilliant player, a very well-rounded one, and one which obviously really stamped his authority very early on in this fixture.
Yeah, such a shame, as we said, that it kind of petered out for him. But yeah, fast forward 8 years, March 2023, this time we're heading to Anfield, and wow, what a game this was. Liverpool 7, Manchester United 0. The biggest win, in this fixture's history. And would you believe it? It was 1-0 at half time. United just fell apart in the second half, but all props to Liverpool. They absolutely tore the United team apart. A team that had just won the Carabao Cup a week prior, so they were feeling pretty confident about themselves. But Liverpool, they just put them to the sword, and Mo Salah in particular scored a couple, set up a couple as well, and in doing so became Liverpool's all-time Premier League leading goal scorer. Matt, obviously this one's a lot more recent in the memory. Talk to me about this game and how brutal those results are, because I think even the season prior or 2 seasons prior, Liverpool I think had won like 5-0 at Old Trafford and 4-0 at Anfield. So definitely some open wounds for United fans in this recent history of this fixture.
Oh, 100%. And I mean, you look at how that fixture felt going into it, it was not feeling like a 7-0 type of thing. You know, often when you associate heavy defeats, you associate it when the home side or the side, which is the underdog, so to speak, goes into it feeling a bit lifeless, feeling like their team might get pumped 7-0 or whatever else. United fans went into that game pretty confident, which I think is almost unheard of. You know, they took pretty much their full strength team, if I do remember correctly, to Anfield, and they got absolutely pelted. And yeah, I mean, I'd say a day you want to forget, but United have had far too many of those games in recent years. That obviously that one is ridiculous and even more absurd than the others because of the nature of 7 goals and obviously against your biggest rivals. But it's been pretty few and far between the amount of times that they keep losing in pretty ridiculous manners, and 7-0 to your biggest rivals. Oh my word.
Yeah, it's there's days to forget, and then there's that. I mean, it just baffles me still that it was only 1-0 at half time. Conceding 6 second half goals is, yeah, it's crazy, really. Sorry, as I was saying that, I was thinking to myself, Tottenham didn't concede 6 goals in one half on the weekend, did they? No, it was split over 2 halves. That makes me feel a bit better about myself. So, yeah, definitely a day to forget. But that Liverpool team, they're ruthless. Their depth is fantastic. And United, I think I remember like early in the game, I think Fernandes and Rashford both had decent chances at 0-0. Didn't take them, and yeah, boy, were they punished. But it's the magic of the Premier League. It's, these fixtures will come around again in the season, and who knows which way they will go. But let us know your favourite result against your rival's team in the comments. If there's an iconic one that you remember, if there's one that sticks out to you, or a biggest scoreline, let us know in the comments. But that will round it off for the final episode of In the Spotlight 2024. Matt, thank you so much. It's been a blast, this one, and I'm looking forward to seeing what we have to go on in 2025.
Absolutely. And I mean, obviously, 2024 was a landmark year for this series, starting this series on Striver TV channel. And it's been a pleasure to do it every single week, 5 episodes deep now, I believe. And yeah, it's great. And obviously, as you say, we're very excited to see what 2025 brings. But obviously, as always, Junior, thank you very much for joining me. Everyone listening, massive happy new year. Hopefully you have a great year filled with happiness, great memories, and just a general great year, and do what you want to do and achieve what you want to achieve. But that's all from us today. Thank you very much for listening, as always, on the Striver TV channel. If you'd like to, feel free to subscribe, feel free to follow us on all our social media channels, and have a great new year. Thank you very much for listening, and take care.